It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Podcast, available on iHeartRadio every morning and also on Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your podcast from. Well, Friday has arrived, the 16th day for December. We're getting very, very close. And Rich Harvey, everybody is running around like headless chooks at the moment trying to transact, and you've been laying low over the last week because you caught COVID again.
Yeah, unfortunately I did, mate. I've come down with it, but it was only about a 5 or 6 day lying low, but was able to work from home during it, but pleased to be over it. But there's certainly a lot of people out there wanting to make a last-ditch effort to get into the property market. And as you say, they've only got one more Saturday to do that tomorrow. Yeah, if you really are serious about getting out there, you do need to be having a look. There's pretty slim pickings, I've got to say. Low level of listings this time of year, but often there's also really good buying. So if you are cashed up and got your finance approved, could be an opportune time to get out there.
It's your weekday real estate breakfast with news, interviews and predictions every morning on the Real Estate Podcast. It's the Main Centre Forecast with PRD, selling smarter every day.
And let's head around the country and have a look at your weather on this Friday morning. And first we go to Sydney. Good morning to you. Expecting a possible shower with a high of 22 degrees. Partly cloudy. It should be mainly dry though in Melbourne with 21. In Brisbane, expecting 1 or 2 showers with 27 degrees as your forecast top. And in Perth today, it's the place to be. Blue skies with sunshine and a temperature of 31 degrees.
We are just as addicted to property as you are. Every weekday morning from 6:30. Let's Talk Property, a podcast series with Rich Harvey.
Well, the prestige property sector occupies a special place in the Australian real estate market. Many buyers in this space are buying with cash, and the greatest challenge is finding probably a luxurious home that ticks all of your boxes. And despite buyers having the means to buy, they are held back by supply. Listings are limited, and while you might have $10 to $20 million to spend, it won't help you if the property isn't on the market. So if you've got that kind of coin, what special tricks can you use to uncover prestige properties, and how do buyers advocates stay on top of availabilities with properties in the premier end of the market? So to lift the lid on these kinds of secrets, we have Rich Harvey, who is back from Buyers Advocate and CEO of propertybuyer.com.au. And welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast, Rich.
Thank you, Craig. Great to be on the show.
So it's an interesting subject, having a look at the luxury properties. So why is the supply of luxury properties apparently so limited and difficult to come by?
Well, it's really simple economics, Craig, with the luxury end of the market. It's got low supply and high demand, which equals high prices, because it takes a lot longer to build high-end prestige homes. Sometimes it might take 2 or even 3 years to complete a super luxury property, particularly when they're built on slopes where they've got fantastic views, or on the edge of cliffs, or right on the harbour foreshore, where access is very difficult. And just the quality and complexity of these builds is very difficult. The other thing is, Craig, it's pretty obvious there's very limited land available in these suburbs. You know, as we say, God's not making any more of this beachfront or waterfront land anytime soon. So, and that's where these properties are located. So the inner harbour, the waterways, you know, all of these prime positions, and they're very, very tightly held. So people tend to live in these properties for generations. And so they're often passed down to the family in generations, so they often don't make it onto the market. The reason you don't see a lot of properties advertised is at least 50 to 60% or more of these prestige properties are sold via the off-market means. So they're not going to be publicly advertised. For us as buyers agents, and with my company Property Buyer, we've been dealing in this space for 20, 30 years, and we know what this challenge is for buyers and what a difficult thing it is to find these kind of listings. And it's really frustrating to have a qualified buyer at this level and not have enough stock to show them.
Okay, and if a prestige property is listed on the market without perhaps any asking price, explain to people what that means in reality.
Well, it doesn't actually mean anything. It just simply means that the agent is seeking an expression of interest. They're trying to gauge the market to see what these prestige buyers will pay and how deep their pockets are. So the top selling agents are very skilled, if not cunning, at this upper end. They know that there's very, very limited supply, and therefore the owners can be quite bullish with their asking prices. In fact, when I talk to some of these agents and I say, look, what's your price guide? And they'll say, oh, Rich, they want 50 million, and it's not worth that. It's probably worth 40 or 35, right? But they know they can be quite bullish because there's just nothing else around that a prestige buyer can buy. The market conditions really do play a significant factor on the upper ceiling of what a buyer is willing to pay. These properties, they're typically listed online without a price. They're just listed as an auction campaign or as an expression of interest or offers by a deadline rather than specifying a price, because the owner doesn't want to cap the price that a buyer is willing to pay.
Yeah. And off-market purchasing is something that people, I think, are quite familiar with. But in the prestige market, how do you go about uncovering these exclusive listings?
Well, now you're asking for our secret sauce, Craig, but that's why I've come on your podcast to lift the lid. Look, number one, I think obviously the online portals will really be the tip of the iceberg. You can go onto realestate and domain.com.au and have a look and put in, Vaucluse or Bellevue Hill and see what sort of properties will come up. And look, there may be a handful of properties, but as I said, there's only going to be very, very few that will be available that way. And you can set up your alerts so you can get sent those sort of things. But I think the best way that we find these kind of properties is simply through our relationships with localised selling agents. So these local agents have really worked what they call their farm or their backyard for decades. They know the owners. They have intimate relationships with these owners that literally goes back generations. So whenever they get a sniff that an owner is considering selling, they're all over them like a red rash. And we spend many, many years and decades as well cultivating those relationships with selling agents. We'll attend awards nights or coffee and lunch meetings. We'll be emailing, phoning them every week, and we'll just be having a conversation about what kind of briefs we have and try to match their potential vendors with our potential buyers. And at the end of the day, these prestige agents, they want a no-fuss transaction. They love to deal with qualified buyers who don't want to waste their time. They just want to look at really lovely properties. They really love working with buyers advocates that have a highly qualified buyer that's got the means to pay for these high-priced properties. Because there's also a lot of prestige and also confidentiality and anonymity issues attached to buying these sort of properties, because often it's a celebrity or a sports star or politician that are living in these properties, and they don't want the world to know and the paparazzi to be sitting outside, the gates just looking at who's going in and potentially going to buy the property. So it really works both ways.
Yes, the paparazzi, that's a problem into itself. Of course, people need as much help as possible when they decide to enter the prestige property market. So what other steps do you do to help buyers get a leg into something that is more top shelf?
We send out buyer briefs to our agent network with a very detailed parameters around the types of properties that we're looking for. And when we do that, we've got thousands of agents on our database, and they may not necessarily be local agents. They could be an out-of-area agent that happens to know an owner that lives in that area. And that way we get access to those properties. We also do posts on social media. On our website, we put out a properties wanted alert. But one of the most interesting ways that I've found successful the last couple of years, particularly during COVID, is after we've approached the agents and they said, look, we don't have anything, then I'll literally go and do a letterbox drop or even a door knock to specific streets. And if I'm targeting a particular type of home that I know the owner wants, I could potentially get a leg in the door that way. So it might sound a bit confronting, but actually it can work really well, because for the owner, they don't have to engage with a selling agent and they can avoid paying selling commission because our buyer pays the fee. And the other thing we do is we don't have to then have the headache of the owner having to prepare the home for sale. They can just sell it as is. They don't have to clean it up every Saturday for the open for home inspections. So I'll give you an example. Last year, I did a letterbox drop in a suburb. We did about 400 letters and you get a pretty low response rate, but I got 2 really good quality responses. I went and looked at the properties. I thought, yep, they could fit. I took my clients through the properties and we ended up buying one of them. Ended up doing around 6 transactions like that last year. So direct approach to owners can actually work. Another way we help our buyers get a leg up into the prestige market is through our community networks. We have a number of contacts and groups in particular areas. It might be part of a sporting group or a school group or even just Facebook groups. And we do different posts there to particularly find out if anyone is thinking of selling, and we can start that conversation as well.
Okay, and how do you monitor the values of properties at the top end of the market? Because there seems to be a lot fewer sales, so that kind of in itself presents maybe a bit of a challenge at your end.
It certainly does, Craig. When there are so few sales available to do your comparable sales analysis, it does make it really tricky. But at the same time, you can be quite successful if you know what you're doing. First thing I do is I track the weekly auction sales results and the private treaty results. So you've got to be tracking it on a weekly basis. The other thing I do is I speak to all of the local agents at that top end quite regularly to find out where the market is trending and what they've recently sold. And that gives you a really good handle on whether the market's going up, down or sideways. The other thing, I have very strong connections with luxury and prestige property valuers. When people are selling their home at the top end, often before they even get a selling agent involved, they may actually call up one of these top valuers who will go through the property. So they're a great source of knowledge and experience as to working out what sort of price to offer on a property, because they may have already been through the property themselves. It's not just a matter of looking at direct sales. There's a whole host of other things you've got to consider. So you've specifically got to consider the land size, the aspect and the slope, the quality of construction, quality and level of finishes, the privacy angle. But that's very, very important for people at the top end. The floor plan and how it flows. And I guess if you want to summarize it, it's the wow factor. What are the things that this particular prestige property really delivers in spades? Is it, a sauna? Is it the 12-car garage underneath the home? Is it the wine cellar, the gym studio? There's all sorts of fancy factors. Is it the point blank views of the opera house? What is it? So all of those things will really contribute to the overall value of the property.
And are there any particular networks, because this is really critical when it comes to the prestige market, that you're able to tap into when it comes to just being able to identify and locate, I guess?
Oh, absolutely. So, that's one of my fortes as a business owner, having been in the game for over 2.5 decades, is my professional network. They say, Craig, your net worth is determined by your network. And I've cultivated many, many deep business relationships. I'm part of a number of high-level business groups where I mix with all sorts of high-flying people. And all of those people are what they call gatekeepers. They're going to be interacting with their own client base of high net worth clients. So they may often be happy to share information with me. So the other types of people I've got on my network are private bankers, premium bankers, family offices who actually manage high net worth family wealth, really top financial planners. But at the end of the day, it's all about having connections with friends and family that can put us in touch with someone that might be either considering buying or selling. So it's really drawing on all of those well-established and long-term relationships that we've got.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Good on you, Rich Harvey. I think you've got everybody thinking this morning about prestige properties. So we will catch up again next week and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Craig. Always great to be with you.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.